The train station was loud, cold, and full of people trying to leave the year behind as quickly as possible. She stood on the platform with her suitcase, checking the time again even though she already knew it by heart. She was supposed to spend New Year's Eve in another city, with family, with plans made weeks in advance. He stood a few meters away, pretending to scroll on his phone, also waiting for the same train, also carrying a year he didn't feel like celebrating. They didn't know each other. Not yet. The train was late. 30 minutes turned into an hour. Announcements echoed without offering real information, and irritation spread through the crowd. She sighed loudly, more tired than angry, and that small sound somehow made him look up. Their eyes met briefly, and he gave a half smile. The kind people exchange when they silently agree that the situation is ridiculous. A few minutes later, they were standing closer, commenting on the delay, then joking about how the new year clearly didn't want to start on schedule. The conversation was easy, unexpected, and strangely comforting, like talking to someone you didn't know you needed. When the train finally arrived, it was overcrowded. People squeezed in, luggage everywhere, no free seats. Without really thinking, they ended up standing next to each other in the corridor, holding onto the same rail. The movement of the train forced them closer, and instead of pulling away, they laughed quietly about it. They talked about where they were going, why they were traveling on New Year's Eve, what kind of year they were leaving behind. There was honesty in their words, not the kind meant to impress, but the kind that slips out when you believe you'll never see someone again. Somewhere between stations, the lights flickered, and the train slowed to a stop. Another delay. Groans filled the carriage, but neither of them seemed bothered anymore. Midnight was approaching fast, and it became clear they wouldn't make it to their destinations on time. Someone nearby started a countdown on their phone, and laughter spread. When the clock hit 12, strangers clinked plastic cups, wished each other Happy New Year, and shared smiles that would disappear by morning. She and he looked at each other, surprised by how meaningful the moment felt. No fireworks, no city view, just a moving train and a shared pause in time. When the train finally resumed, they exchanged numbers without making a big deal out of it. No promises, no expectations. Just a quiet agreement that this moment didn't need to end completely. As the train pulled into the next station and they went their separate ways, both felt the same unexpected thought. The year hadn't started the way they planned, but somehow it had started exactly right. Sometimes the best beginnings don't happen where you're supposed to be. They happen when plans break, trains stop, and two lives briefly move at the same speed. The days after the trip felt strangely suspended, like the moment on the train hadn't fully settled into reality yet. She returned to her family celebration late, smiling more than she could explain, replaying fragments of conversation in her mind. He went back to his routine too, telling himself it was just a coincidence, just a New Year story that would fade with time. And yet, neither of them forgot. Messages started simply, cautiously. A short, "Did you make it?" turned into longer exchanges about work, daily annoyances, small observations that didn't matter to anyone else. There was no rush to impress, no pressure to turn it into something more. It felt safe, light, and unexpectedly grounding. A week later, they met again, this time on purpose. No train delays, no crowds, no excuses. Just coffee in a quiet place halfway between their lives. Seeing each other in daylight felt different but familiar, like recognizing someone you already know in a new setting. Conversation flowed just as easily, maybe even better. They laughed about the chaos of that night, about how strange it was that a delay had created space for something new. Slowly, they shared more. About relationships that hadn't worked, about choices they questioned, about how both of them had entered the new year feeling unsure of what came next. There was comfort in realizing they weren't alone in that uncertainty. As weeks passed, their connection grew steadily, without dramatic turns. They learned each other's rhythms, when to talk and when to listen, when to push and when to pause. Sometimes they joked that the train had given them permission to meet without expectations, without the usual pressure of beginnings. What they were building didn't feel fragile or rushed. Felt intentional. They understood that not every meaningful relationship starts with a perfect setting or clear plans. Some start in cramped corridors under flickering lights, with strangers counting down to midnight. Looking back, they both knew that if the train had arrived on time, if everything had gone according to plan, their lives would have continued on separate tracks. But delays have a way of revealing what schedules hide. That new year didn't give them answers or guarantees. It gave them a meeting imperfect, unexpected, and real. And sometimes that is enough to change the direction of an entire year, one quiet message, one shared memory, one intentional step at a time.